Personal Power, Volume 1, Chapter 4. Conscious Egohood. There are 7 stages of consciousness as taught by the great masters of the science of being. 5 of these stages we have just considered. The respective stages of 1, consciousness of separate existence, of existence as a separate and distinct individuality. 2, consciousness of the ownership and control of the instrument and machinery of the physical body. Number 3, consciousness of the ownership and control of the instrument and machinery of emotion. Number 4, consciousness of the ownership and control of the instrument and machinery of thought. And number 5, consciousness of the ownership and control of the instrument and machinery of will. There are 2 other and higher stages of consciousness remaining to be considered. In your consideration of the physical body, of the emotional states, of the thought states, of the will states, respectively, you have found it possible to abstract your consciousness of each of these instruments from your consciousness of your I am I or master self. Each and every one of these processes of self-analysis has found and left you conscious of the existence here and now of that I am I or master self, independent of the several instruments and elements of machinery which it owns and uses. At the center of each, even of will, you found your I am I existing in firm, constant, and identical presence and power throughout all the changes in the activities and processes of its instruments and its machinery of expression and manifestation. But in the 6th stage of self-analysis, you will discover that you are unable to abstract a certain kind of consciousness from the I am I or master self. You will be unable to set aside, examine, analyze, experiment with, and detach this form of consciousness from your real self or I am I, try as you may. Hence, you see, you will there have reached the stage of reality, of ultimate fact and being within yourself. This is a most important stage of your self-analysis, of your search for the I am I or master self. Therefore, you should approach it carefully and conduct your inquiry with earnestness and diligence. The 6th stage of your self-analysis is that known as ultimate self-consciousness. First, you should clearly understand just what is meant and just what is not meant by us in the employment of this term self-consciousness. In the popular usage, the term means an unpleasant and abnormal state of consciousness or awareness of oneself as an object of observation by others. The psychological usage, however, is quite different. It indicates that state of consciousness in which the I am I is fully, keenly, and positively aware of its own existence as an actual entity in being here and now. It is from this state of consciousness that the individual asserts positively and with conviction, I am I here and now. Comparatively, very few individuals experience the full degree of this stage of consciousness. Many, of course, say, I am I, thereby distinguishing themselves from others. This, however, is merely the 1st stage of consciousness, not the 6th. Few proceed further in their realization of self-consciousness. Many are unable to differentiate in consciousness between the I am I and the physical body. Still fewer are those who are able to make the distinction between the I am I and the feeling states, and still fewer are those who can realize the I am I as transcending the thinking states. Very rare and far between indeed are those who are able to distinguish between the consciousness of the will states and the consciousness of the I am I. The great masses of the race think of the self as an aggregate or composite of mind and body, feelings, emotions, thoughts, will activities, etc., and seldom, if ever, catch even a glimpse of the essential and ultimate selfhood of the I am I or master self, the real self. But the great individuals of the race, those who stand out from the masses, will usually be found to have evolved into quite a full state of self-consciousness, and accordingly, they will have experienced that sense of personal power that comes with this recognition of the I am I, master self, real self. This illuminating experience, once it comes to the individual, leaves him changed and different. He is never again the same man. A new world is open to him. A new and positive sense of the reality of his essential being has impressed itself upon him. It comes to many as an awakening from a troubled sleep or dream state, the dawning realization that I am I, in spite of the dream illusion. In this dawn of the realization of ultimate self-consciousness, the individual finds himself at last. An old English writer once said, whether we try to avoid it or not, we must face this reality sometime, this reality of our own egohood, that which makes us say I, and in saying I, leads to the discovery of a new world. A leading American psychologist has said, self-consciousness is a growth. Many persons never have more than a misty idea of such a mental attitude. They always take themselves for granted and never turn the gaze inward. The dawn of self-consciousness, the awakening from the dream of simple consciousness in the individual, is accompanied by a new awareness and consciousness of reality and actual existence. In fact, so strong often becomes this new consciousness of the certainty of real and actual existence that compared with it all other forms of conscious existence fade into comparative insignificance. This consciousness, once firmly established, serves as a tower of strength for the individual in which he may take refuge, and then defy the adverse conditions of the external world of thoughts and things. The process of self-analysis, according to which you have proceeded to abstract, in turn, the consciousness of the physical body, the emotional states, the thought states, and the will states, respectively, has now brought you to the point where you have nothing else left for you to analyze for the purpose of possible abstraction, except the self-consciousness of the existence of the I am I or master self, the real self. But when you undertake to subject that ultimate element of selfhood to such process, you discover that further analysis, abstraction, simplification, and reduction is impossible. You have reached something ultimate, which defies further analysis or simplification or separation into parts, elements, or factors. It is the irreducible element, the insoluble residuum of selfhood. It is egohood itself in its final essence and principle. You have discovered that this I am I or master self is not subject to changes, alteration, or modification. It is not subject to becoming, for it is pure being, always identical with itself, always constant, ever the same. It does not flow, nor is it in a state of flux. It is never transformed, nor is it transmuted. It does not change form, for it has no form. It does not manifest degrees, for it is absolute in its nature and being. It does not take on aspects, modes, or conditions of appearance. It is always itself, its whole self, and nothing but itself. In this respect, it is seen to be entirely different from any of its instruments of machinery, mental or physical. It is not an instrument, nor a part of the machinery. It is that which owns and uses the instruments and the machinery of mental and physical expression and manifestation. Moreover, your experiments will show you conclusively that you cannot set aside or abstract this I am I or master self for the purpose of observation or experiment, as you have been able to do with the physical and mental instruments or machinery which belong to it. You can never make of it an object to be examined or observed by your subjective observer. Try the experiment. You will then find that if you place the I am I at the objective end of your microscope of attention, there will be no subjective I am I left to conduct the examination from the other end of the instrument. Likewise, if you place the I am I at the subjective or observing end of the instrument, then there will be no objective I am I at the other end ready to be observed. Just as the eye sees all outside of itself, but can never see itself, so the I am I may observe and examine everything outside of its essential self, but can never observe and examine its essential self. Here you find a something or somewhat in which subject and object are inseparably joined and combined. Here indeed you find the hypothetical stick with only one end of the old metaphysicians. Here you find something which is always subjective and never objective, something which is all inside without any outside aspect or part. Again, if you attempt to set it aside as you did its instruments and machinery, mental and physical, you will find that you have nothing at all left of selfhood, nothing to still assert I am I. You cannot even think it out of existence, nor imagine it out of being, try as you will. If you try to think of a world without this I am I existent in it, and then proceed to examine this eyeless world, you will find that it is the I am I itself conducting the examination. If you seek to get rid of it by some metaphysical casuistry or subtle casuistry, you will eventually discover that the I am I is still there, hidden behind some kindly metaphysical cloud, peering out cautiously, curiously, to observe how the world is getting along without it. Throw the I am I out of the door of your consciousness and it will come in through the window. Lock the windows and doors against it and it will descend through the chimney. It will gain access somehow, some way. Even though in imagination you may picture yourself as occupying many different bodies successively, each with its own emotional thought and will character, yet you will always find that it is the same identical I am I playing the part of occupant. Or though you may imagine yourself in the role of the King of England, the Archbishop of Canterbury, or the President of the United States, yet you always find yourself playing these several parts, or the last, you will realize that you, the same old I, are the real actor playing the several parts under the various masks and wearing different costumes. You may change characters, garbs, and roles, but you cannot change eyes. You are you and never can't be you. The unfoldment of ultimate consciousness, conscious egohood, will bring to you the realization that you are a focal center of power in the cosmos, a focal center of real power and real being. You will gradually realize that you are a center in the cosmos, just as the sun is a center with multitudes of objects whirling around it or flowing past it. The occult teachers of ancient days were wont to remind each of their students that he himself was a center in the cosmos. For in the cosmos, the circumference is nowhere because the cosmos is infinite. And consequently, the center is everywhere. Therefore, the student was interested to see himself and to think of himself as a focal center of power of being, as a central pivot of the cosmos around which all else revolved. Rightly understood and interpreted, this statement is truth. For each individual I am I is in fact the pivotal center of his own universe, with all the rest revolving about him or passing in review before him. Do not for a moment imagine that this realization of conscious egohood, this I am I consciousness, will unfit you for the duties, tasks, and work of practical everyday life. On the contrary, it will render you many times more efficient in any particular phase of practical life. Realizing the nature of your real being and your relations towards your mental and physical instruments and machinery, you will no longer be caught up in their movements as a man might be caught up in the machinery which he is operating. Instead, you will be able to detach yourself so that you may operate the machinery with increased skill, efficiency, and power. Conscious egohood will cause the muddy waters of your mentality to become as clear as crystal, so as better to reflect the light of that brilliant star of the I am I, which is shining above with a fierceness, clearness, and steadfastness inexpressible in ordinary words. The most practical of all men is the man who realizes the reality of his own nature and being and the character of his relations to his mental and physical instruments of expression and manifestation. When you recognize the nature of your power, when you realize the conscious feeling of that power, Then will you be able to express and manifest that power to a wonderful degree and with an excellence otherwise impossible to you. Such recognition will make you a better businessman, a better engineer, a better lawyer, a better doctor, a better nurse. It will enable you to reach a higher point in your life work and to acquire a higher recompense for your services than would be possible without it. Cultivate the perception and realization of conscious egohood. Seek to develop it by means of thought, of feeling, of imagination. Use all of your mental powers to this end. Employ every instrument at your disposal to discover yourself, your real self. Assert and affirm your real being by saying, thinking, and acting, I am I. There is a magic in these words. Their vibrations will set into motion every atom of your being, and they will re-echo the statement to your ears. You will find the affirmation a tower of strength in hours of need. In moments of weakness, it will revive your failing courage and dwindling determination. It will serve as a powerhouse from which you may send forth currents of power and energy. It will serve as a great magnet which will draw to you the things, persons, and circumstances which you will need in your tasks of life. Use the white magic of the I am I affirmation. As we proceed with our instruction, you will see that this I am I is even greater and grander than we are now stating it to be. It is a focalized center of something or somewhat infinitely greater, the point of contact between the universal and the particular, the unmanifest and the manifest, the uncreate and the create, the infinite and the finite. You are far greater than you know. When you say, I am I, you are uttering a tremendous statement of truth, the full meaning of which you as yet only faintly glimpse. The individual who can say, I am I, with full recognition and thought, and with full realization and feeling, has lighted for himself a lamp which can never be extinguished by the winds of adversity nor the rains of circumstances. Such a one is well on the path to mastery. The seventh stage of your self-analysis, the stage to which you proceed after you have discovered the ultimate nature of the I am I or master self, is that which is known as the stage of power consciousness. In this stage of consciousness, while holding firmly and with doubt-defying conviction to the recognition and realization of the I am I as the ultimate and essential base and ground of your individual being, you nevertheless intuitively are aware of the existence of the underlying reality, with which, in some intimate and essential way, your I am I is united, connected, and coordinated. When this consciousness is awakened by the proper methods, you will become as actually conscious of this intimate relationship as you are now conscious of the existence of your I am I or master self. In fact, the two phases of consciousness will seem gradually to coalesce and combine in your higher perception of reality. Even when the intellect has not as yet been able to work out the puzzle or to read the riddle, the intuitive faculties will report that it is true nevertheless. In the following sections of this book, we shall point out the road whereby the intellect may logically approach the facts concerning this highest truth. For the present, we wish merely to indicate the general nature of the subject and possibly to cause your intuition to begin to unfold so as to receive the full strength of the rays of the sun of truth, which is beating upon it. In the stage of power consciousness, you will know that not only is your I am I, your master self, your real self, a real center of power in the cosmos, you will also know that back of, under and around that I am I, or real self, is the great ultimate principle of power itself, that the I am I is in actual contact with that power, and that the rhythmic variations of power are at least faintly discernible as they throb and thrill through your body. Feeling this, all fear will drop away from you, and a new and strange courage will take possession of you. You will thereafter proceed to the great adventure of life fearlessly and confidently. You will enter into the conscious realization that power, all the power there is back of and supporting you. You will enter into the conscious recognition that in the great substance and strength of power, you live and move and have your being. With the dawn of this consciousness, you will, in all truth, be born again. While it is true that but comparatively few individuals actually experience this consciousness in full degree, yet it is true that many experience it in at least some degree. All may gradually unfold into it if they will turn their attention to that direction. The men and women who have done things in the world of everyday life, if they would speak frankly and freely for publication, could give to the world the testimony that at some time in their lives had come to them a certain strange and wonderful, mysterious sense of actual contact with and relation to a great something, the essence of which was felt to be strength or power. Varying as are the reports of the different individuals who have testified to this phenomenon, there is found a common and general agreement upon the fact that there has been an actual contact with an intimate relation to a something or somewhat infinitely powerful and strong. There is always the consciousness of eminent presence and of power and strength. These individuals have interpreted to themselves these experiences in many ways, each coloring it according to his previous trend of belief or general philosophy of life. To some, it has appeared to partake of a religious nature and color, as if the Supreme Being, or at least one of his archangels, has hovered near, brooded over them, and reflected a portion of the infinite power upon them. Many a successful man has experienced this strange phenomenon and has been comforted by the conviction that he has God on his side, or that God is working in and through me. One of the richest men of our times has repeatedly made statements, at least implicitly expressing this idea. And many of the lesser lights of the world of success have had similar experiences and resulting convictions. Others have attributed the experience to the presence and aid of some friendly, beneficent entity or supernatural personality, a friendly spirit from the other shore. Others have felt it to be a hint of the presence and power of a kindly destiny or fate, or the influence of a beneficent star. Napoleon's belief in his star and the influences exerted over him for many years of his rapid rise is said to have arisen from an experience of this kind occurring at the Bridge of Lodi. He was reticent concerning the actual experience, but he often spoke freely of his star of destiny, at times going so far as to indicate the particular star which he believed was favoring him. Others do not attempt to explain the experience even to themselves. They are content to think of it as that something, the presence and strength of which they have felt, the resulting sense of power after the visitation of which they have experienced. Many others could testify to these strange experiences of contact with power and to the resulting remarkable increase of strength and power therefrom, which afterward flowed into them and through them. The experience, however, is of such an intimate nature and so likely to be regarded as queer by others that most of these individuals have but little or nothing to say concerning it. The following may be stated as the rule. The more successful the individual has been, the higher he has risen in his particular field of endeavor, the greater is the degree of probability that he has undergone some experience similar to that which we have just stated. There may be some who will criticize the above as impractical and fantastic, but such criticism is not likely to come from those who have been exceptionally successful, who have done things and accomplished great achievements, and who also have good memories of their early experiences. Repeat this statement to some man or woman of this kind, then see the individual smile in a particular way, and note the strange expression which will pass over his or her face, though a direct answer may be avoided. This phenomenal experience is not supernatural, nor is it mystic. On the contrary, it is quite natural and intensely practical in its effect. It simply means that the individual in the course of his mental and spiritual evolution has arrived at a stage where in the natural course of things, he contacts power itself, the principle of power, which animates, energizes, and vitalizes the cosmos. He becomes actually aware of the contact and of the influx of power which results from it. Moreover, in most cases of this kind, in fact, when this contact is once experienced and established, thereafter the individual finds it comparatively easy to make a shortcut to power by opening himself to the flow of strength and power from the power principle. It is the phenomena of the spiritual trolley pole coming in contact with the great service cable of power. It is the most natural and the most practical thing in the world. As we have said, it has been experienced in some degree by many of the most practical persons in the world, and much of the subsequent success of such persons has arisen therefrom, and many of such know this to be the cause of their success and power. Moreover, many of the world's most practical individuals are recognizing the existence of this phase of natural phenomena and are striving to effect this contact of the spiritual trolley pole. There is more inquiry concerning these things on the part of such individuals than the great masses of the people ever dreamed. This is not the statement of a new religion, nor of some strange philosophy or ism. It has nothing to do with supernaturalism, spiritism, or any other teaching of that character. It is instead the statement of a cold scientific fact or series of facts, all of which may be demonstrated by any person who will lay aside his prejudices and his skepticism sufficiently long for him to try out the idea and plan with earnestness and in good faith for a reasonable length of time. The results are open to any such person who will place himself in the proper mental attitude toward the facts and who will await confidently and expectantly the dawning of the experience and the inflow of the power from the principle of power. It is true that many religious or semi-religious or quasi-religious sects and cults, and many new popular schools of philosophy and metaphysics have recognized and adopted the general and fundamental principles of this great truth, and have interpreted the same, each in the terms of its own particular belief or theory, coloring it with the shade, tint, or hue of its particular beliefs or dogmas, labeling it with one of many new and wonderful titles, expounding it in strange and often weird and bizarre fashion. But the fundamental facts are greater than any of these attempts to interpret and explain them in the terms of cults, sects, and schools, too great to be dwarfed by the limitations of the doctrines and dogmas built around them in the attempt to confine them. There is no monopoly of this great truth. No one has a corner on it, though many attempts in that direction have been made. Those who will seek the intellectual recognition of the relation of the I am I, as we shall set forth in this book, and who will open the doors of their being to the conscious realization of the contact with power which comes to those who await and are ready for it, will gradually unfold the power and ability to manifest the superimposed strength and energy of power through their mental and physical channels of expression and manifestation. You are invited to test and prove this for yourself.